Welcome to another edition of Danny's Hot Takes. Today, we're going to be reviewing the new Codex Drukhari. I'm very excited about this book. John, how do you feel about this?
Not as good as you, but mainly because I don't play Drukhari. It's a very good book.
Hell yeah. Dude, I'm very excited about this. It has so many cool new rules. What a great book. If this is the direction that all the Xenos books are going to take, I'm very excited to see what the rest of the edition brings. So let's kind of dive right in. Remember, kind of on these reviews, we usually don't go over the lore section of the rules, but that's not like the end of the world or anything. Like, you should definitely read those whenever you have a chance, because they are fantastic. I'm very excited about. There's a story about a mandrake. I cannot wait to read that more in depth. But I've had barely enough time to digest these data sheets. And detachment abilities and everything else, so we'll be going over those. So this book will detail how to build a Drukhari army in 9th edition of 40k. Let's just get started. So let's start with detachment abilities. Now, Drukhari has got some really interesting detachment abilities that are much different than other armies. So as you would expect, if you have a detachment that all has one kind of obsession, just like before, they will get that obsession. And obsessions are like the chapter tactics for Drukhari armies. So if you have like a witch cult detachment that's all one particular witch cult that has the cult, they'll get those benefits, and etc., just like you would expect. But Drukhari have some ways that they can kind of mess around with that a little bit. As usual, you'll get obsec on your troops choices that you take in any Drukhari detachment, which is great. So they have a couple of different things. They have raiding forces. So raiding forces means if every detachment in your army is a patrol, then you pay no command points for that. That's really cool. So that means if your whole army is 2 patrols, you don't have to pay anything for that. You don't have to have 3 like you did before, which is really nice. Same thing, like if you're a homunculus, coven, or witch cult or cabal, you'll get those obsessions just like you normally would. They also have a rule that says that no other Eldari can be in a Drukhari a detachment with Drukhari models in order to become a Drukhari detachment. So that means you can't take like Ynnari, like Yvrain or something like that, or have a mixed Eldari detachment unless everybody is Ynnari, which I thought was pretty cool. I like the weakling kin rule. What a great name for that. And then finally you have the option to do real space raid. So this is very interesting. So it lets you take one detachment that has to have an Archon Warlord and then also a Succubus and Homunculus. And then if they have a unit of Cabalites, a unit of Witches, and a unit of Racks, everybody still gets their obsession. So this kind of lets you combine a bunch of different things into one detachment, so you don't have you can knock out those slots a little bit easier. There's advantages and disadvantages to this, of course. It means that, like, if you're going to take a battalion, this is going to take all of your HQ slots. But you'll also have all of your core or your troops filled out, which is kind of nice. The other advantage this gives you is for your Archon. Your Archon will get the Raid Mastermind ability, which means any unit in there within 6 inches of him that's core will get to reroll to hit rolls of 1. And Drukhari are not... They do not skimp on the core units. Pretty much everything in this book that's not like a dedicated, like, quote-unquote battle tank like the Ravager or a transport has the core keyword. So, which is really nice for Drukhari. So it's got a couple of really interesting ways that you can build your army and kind of really customize it. And it makes it a little bit easier to build a Drukhari army because they have such a unique design style where they have basically 3 different factions are all one technical faction, and you have to kind of mix them up. So Drukhari are already kind of souping, but this just allows them to soup and still be Drukhari totally a little bit easier, which is nice. So, in every book that's come out, Games Workshop has given us something new, like the John, what are those things called for Death Guard that they get? The pathogens, deadly pathogens?
Oh, deadly pathogens, yeah, the points upgrades.
Right. So every army in 40k, Space Marines got the command structure, Necrons got the Cryptek Arcana. The Lords of Commorragh are abilities that you can give to make like your Archon a Master Archon, your Succubus a Master Succubus, and your Homunculus, as you would expect, to be a Master Homunculus. Actually, his name is just Dave. And then the this all costs points, of course. Like it's 15 points for the Archon and the Succubus, and 20 points for the Homunculus. This is cool. You could do this in a Real Space Raiders detachment, which is great. It gives them access to a special ability, and then also a unique relic and warlord trait that's only available to a master of their particular profession. These are really cool. Your Archon one lets you fight twice for 15 points once per game, which is awesome. Great relic in the Soul Helm, which makes your guy significantly harder to kill, a 5-up feel no pain, and also -1 to hit. And then your Warlord trait just gives a +1 to damage, which is interesting on a couple of different weapons. I think it's not a terrible Warlord trait. There's a bunch of really good Warlord traits in here, though, so don't hold your breath out for that one. That one may not be the best one. The Witch Cult one is a special... The Witch Cult and the Homunculus ones, I think, are especially good. The Witch Cult gives you Show Stealer, which lets you move an additional 3 inches when you consolidate, and you don't have to move closer to the closest enemy model, which means that you can just walk yourself right out of combat after you're done fighting, so you don't get to... which I think is amazing. And then also, the Relic is pretty decent. Dancer's Edge. Basically, it's an Archite Glaive that gets an extra -1 AP and dose up to 2 damage instead of 1, and then if you roll a 2 wound of 6, they ignore Invulse saves. And then Whirling Death is an interesting Warlord trait, and that one lets you, instead of using your normal attacks characteristic, you get 3 plus the number of enemy models within 2 inches of it. So if you're surrounded by Orc Boys or something like that, you can really throw out like a ton of attacks, which is pretty nice. Or any kind of Horde unit, I guess, like Termagants or Guardsmen or something like that. But the Succubus already has 6 attacks, so I think there might be better choices than that one. The Homunculus proclivity is they get Alchemical Maestro or Maestro, and so that is pretty neat in that basically it makes you get back up on a 2+ like element, and you get back with D3 wounds remaining. Awesome. That character is already hard to kill, so I think that's amazing. The Poisoner's Ampule is okay. It does let you shut off auras on a model within 9 inches, which is pretty interesting. Twisted Reanimator is great. It just lets you bring back D3 rack models in a rack unit within 3 inches, which is really good because racks are kind of hard to kill. And we'll be going over racks. I think they're one of the better troop choices that you have in this book. In addition to that, they also give you access to a Favored Retinue. And so a Favored Retinue allows you to upgrade 1 unit in your army to either Cabalite Trueborn for a Master Archon, the Hecatrix Blood Brides for a Succubus, and the Hemocytes for the Homunculus. Cabalite Trueborn, they did preview. Those guys are great. The Hecatrix Blood Brides are awesome. They get +1 weapon skill, they get +1 leadership, and then they also have a rule every time you have the Blade Artist ability. It goes from AP, instead of improving your AP by 1, it improves by 3. And we'll go over Blade Artist a little bit later. But that's like an army-wide special rule that almost, as far as I can remember, unless it's a beast, like the beast handler, like those beasts that are associated with him, like everything in the army gets that, even the transports. So anytime you roll a 6 to wound, you get an extra -1 AP. This takes it to -3, which makes the basic witch weapons in that squad AP -4 if you roll a 6 to wound, which is gross. And then you have the Hemocytes. They get +1 Invulse save, which is awesome. They get another +1 leadership, and they ignore the first failed save, basically. So if they fail a save, that damage causes, or that attack causes 0 damage. The next thing goes over like how you select your obsessions for obsessions, warlord traits, and stratagems and that kind of stuff. Keep in mind, this is a little complicated, so make sure you read this page pretty specifically. Like, so if you're not taking Real Space Raiders, you have to have a full detachment of whatever you have in order to get access to the Coven or Witch Cult or Cabal only stratagem, and that includes things like the. This is important, especially for like Cult of Strife, from the supplement that came out in Warzone. Charadon or Caradon, and that because you have to have a detachment to take that those particular new stratagems, warlord traits, and relics. So just be aware of that. Now, taking the real space raid gives you access to all of this stuff normally, but it may not for that specialist supplement. So that may need a FAQ. We'll see. All right. So first we have the Cabal. So we'll go over what their special rules are. Cabal the Black Heart, kind of the big bad boy on the street. Pretty much everybody took this for Agents of Vect, which has changed significantly. But their trait has also changed pretty handily. So they used to be +1 on the chart for power for pain, which is still true. But they also let you do that for your blades or your blades for hire as well, which is really nice. So things like Incubi can advance and charge on the first turn in a Cabal the Blackheart detachment, which is nice. They also get +1 leadership, and they kind of get half of Mastercrafters, where they get to reroll it to hit roll every time they shoot or fight, which is great. The Warlord trait is the same, Labyrinth and Cunning. Basically, anytime anybody spends a command point, roll a d6. On a 6, you get a command point back. And then their Relic has changed. Writ of the Living Muse lets you reroll to wound rolls of 1 within 6. Now it's only core units, so you won't be able to use it on your Ravagers, which is probably fine. All right. Next, and then finally you have Agents of Vect. So Agents of Vect is very much different. Before it used to let you cancel a stratagem for 4 command points. Now it's 0 command points, but after a stratagem happens, you can use this strat. For the rest of the game, anytime your opponent wants to use that stratagem again, they have to pay an extra command point, as long as it's not a command reroll, which is pretty huge. Yeah, it's a lot more fair. It feels better for your opponent. It's not just a straight up cancellation of what they're trying to do. But it does make their life a lot more difficult, especially if their army is built on a particular stratagem. Or, like, it's a really expensive one that they might use, like, twice a game or 3 times a game, but, like, that's what they're banking all their command points for, and that just gums up the entire works for that, which is pretty great. And it costs you nothing. It's just a benefit. Next, we have Cabal the Poison Tongue. They did preview this on GW's site, so I'm not going to go over this a ton. Their Warlord trait is Towering Arrogance, which gives you a 5-up feel no pain against mortal wounds. Their Relic is Relic Pistol, which allows you to ignore Lookout Sir, and you don't get cover against it. But it's Pistol 2, 18 inches, Strength 2, -2, D3 damage with Poison Weapon 2+. So it does wound on it too, which is nice. And then their Insidious Misdirection is a stratagem. That's an amazing strat. I think Cabal the Poison Tongue is very good. They're probably, I think they might be my favorites. I don't know though. I need to play around with some math and things like that to really decide which one I think is probably the best one. Cabal the Blackheart is also amazing. Then we've got Cabal the Flayed Skull. So this lets you ignore cover on your units that fly, or that's embarked on a transport that can fly, which is pretty nice. And you get +2 inches to movement on vehicle units. So they're kind of like the mounted faction. Make those Venoms really, really fly. Famed Savagery is a Warlord trait that hasn't changed. It's +1 attack, +1 strength. Then they have the Obsidian Veil, which gives your Archon a 4-up invulnerable save, which is pretty nice. Masters of the Shadow Sky is their stratagem. It gives you +1 to hit against a unit that has fly, or if it's an aircraft, you get +2 to hit instead to cancel out that aircraft bonus, which is pretty nice. Cabal the Obsidian Rose. This adds 6 inches to the range of your assault, rapid fire, and heavy weapons. It also gives you a reroll to wound roll every single time you shoot, which is pretty nice. I really like that. That makes a big difference when the volume of shots in Drukhari has kind of dropped significantly. Like things like venom cannons and things like that are only 6 shots, so rerolling one of the failed wound rolls is actually kind of a big deal. And then their Warlord trait, Deathly Perfectionist, is +1 strength to the weapons your Warlord has, which is interesting. Like going to a Strength 9 blast pistol is kind of cool. And their Armor of Misery is a 3-up save, and then you're also -1 to hit from melee attacks. Their stratagem is weird. It's 1 command point. You roll it after you fail a leadership test, and you roll for combat attrition. basically every model that would run away from combat attrition shoots, and if they manage to do a wound, they come back. They don't fail the combat attrition test, or they don't like run away, which is interesting. Or if they're engaged, they get to make a melee attack. I don't know how good it is. It's okay. And then we also have, as is tradition now, we have these custom rules that you can do this. And this is for every single obsession. So for Cabals, for Witch Cult, for Coven, they all have a ton of really interesting, good traits. So ones that I like, and I'm just going to go over those kind of. I like the Merciless Razorkin, which gives you, anytime you shoot a splinter weapon, an unmodified 6 scores an extra hit. The Torturous Efficiency is good too. Anytime you make an attack with a ranged weapon, if you roll a wound roll of 6, it improves the AP by 1. So those in combination, I think, are pretty good if you're going to do like Venom Spam or something like that. I think that's pretty solid. Toxin Crafters is interesting. I haven't done the math on that comparatively to some of the other things. But basically, anytime you roll a poison weapon, you roll a 6 to hit, it makes them wound on 2s instead of 4s, which is nice. And you re-roll 2 wound rolls of 1 with poison weapons. So I think there's probably something there. But I'd have to mess around with it and see if that's actually worth it. And that'll take up both of your... If it's all-consuming, which is great. If you have an obsession and it takes up both your slots, it's an all-consuming obsession. Which I thought was funny. That made me laugh. Because I'm lame. So, we've got Cult of Strife. And this is kind of this is Lilith Hellsprax's Witch Cult. They're interesting. They get +1 to charge if nobody's in engagement with a unit, because they want to fight it themselves, which I thought was cool. And then they have always strikes first in combat. So as long as they're engaged, they get to strike first, which is cool. So that means you can consolidate into them potentially, and maybe they don't get to fight. I don't know. It's a weird way to word it. Like, why wouldn't they just always strikes first in combat? It says specifically they have to be engaged. I just thought that was a weird wording. The Warlord trait is 2 extra. It gives them Tesla on their close combat attacks, so a 6 to hit, it hits an additional 2 times. The Vile Bouquet is their relic, which lets them roll a d6 at the start of each battle round, and they get an extra combat drug. And then their stratagem is 2 CP to either shoot or fight again, with a witch unit specifically, not any unit of Cult of Strife. So that's kind of a... So yeah, be careful of people using this on Hellions and things like that, because it doesn't quite work that way. It's literally one word that prevents them from doing that, and they can do that once a battle round. But for 2 command points, that's very solid, I think. To fight again for 2 CP on a witch unit is good. Then you've got Cult of the Cursed Blade. I've always liked these guys. They get +1 strength. And then anytime you make an unmodified saving throw of a 6, after the unit finishes making its melee attacks, they do a mortal wound to them back, which is interesting. That seems super annoying. And keep in mind, everybody has invul saves, so you're always going to be able to try and make a save, almost always, against an attack. So you can bounce mortal wounds on these guys all day. Let's see here. So then we have Treacherous Deceiver. That's their Warlord trait. And the Warlord basically on a 4+ every time they make an attack. Every time they make a 4+ on their save, they do a mortal wound instead of a 6. Their relic is Traitor's Embrace, which was a thing that basically it coiled around their heart, and when they died, it exploded and tried to kill whoever killed them. After they die to a melee attack on a 2+, whoever attacked them takes D3 plus 3 mortal wounds. Pretty brutal. Venomous Shard Bombs is a meme. It lets you for 1 CP. It lets you Overwatch with a squad, and they get to throw 5 plasma grenades that have poison 2+ instead. This was a stratagem before where you charge them in terrain and they make you take mortal wounds because they set up booby traps. That's kind of their thing. They edge the trees in monowire and stuff like that and kill you. Anyway, it's not a great one. But their other abilities, +1 strength on everything, is huge. Cults of the Red Grief, these guys were the fast boys. Now, they lost their ability to advance and charge. That's because everybody in the Dark Eldar book on turn 2, if they have Power from Pain, gets to advance and charge anyway. So, they get to reroll charges now and get +2 inches when they do advance. So, they're still the speediest of speedy. The Warlord trait is like transhuman, but on the hit roll. So it's a hit roll of 1 to 3 always fails against that character, which I think is really interesting, especially on somebody with a 4+ invulnerable save. Anyway, it makes them really resilient to damage, actually. Then you have the Blood Glaive, which is a 3 damage Archai Glaive, which is dope. Their Athletic Aerialists is a pretty interesting stratagem. Basically, instead of consolidating, if there's a transport within 6, they basically just fall back and jump in the transport. So, which is pretty cool. So they can get out, shoot, kill something, consolidate back into a transport, which is probably pretty annoying. I would imagine that would be. The other cults are interesting. Just a couple of them that are pretty cool. I like the Precise Killers, actually. It makes your Blade Artists go off on a 5 instead of a 6. So if you're taking the Hecatrix Blood Brides, getting a 5+ to wound means your AP -4 is pretty dope. And then you've got Test of Skill is pretty decent. That one is +1 to hit if you make a melee attack against a monster or vehicle. Oh no, sorry, it's +1 to wound. My bad. That's even better. There's some weird ones though, like Agile Hunters is bizarre. I'm not sure why this is an all-consuming obsession. Basically, if you make an attack that targets a unit that flies, you get +1 to hit. And if you take the Hypex combat drug, you get +4 inches instead of +3 inches. I don't understand why that takes up both your slots. That seems weird to me. Anyway, they're cool. If you want to build your own cult, I think that's always really interesting. Note that in these, none of them have the ability to copy a cult of like the Red Grief or copy Cult of Strife, which means I think technically by the rules you have to paint your army like one of those cults, which is kind of weird. I mean, nobody's going to actually play that way, but like I could see that being a contentious thing if you're playing in Warhammer World or something like that. All right, then you got Homunculus Covens. Prophets of Flesh used to give you a 4-up invulnerable save. That's not a thing anymore. They basically get transhuman physiology against anything that has strength 7 or less, which is interesting. And they heal a wound on all their monsters, grotesques, and characters every turn. Diabolical Soothsayer is different. That used to give you +3d3 command points. Now that's, you at the start of the battle, you pick one. Your Warlord either gets +1 toughness and wounds, or they get +1 movement and attacks, which is kind of cool. And then the Vexator Mask, which I love the fluff on this. It's the flayed face of a Shadowseer. No Overwatch, and you get to pick a unit within 3 to fight last. Basically, they're ineligible. Sin's Writ Large is their stratagem. You can pick a unit of infantry within 6 inches of a homunculus. Anytime you make... it lets you reroll it to hit roll. If it's on a grotesque, it costs 2 command points instead of just 1, which is kind of cool. So getting rerolls to hit on racks is interesting. Although on turn 3, you're also hitting on a 2+, and racks are not like the fastest thing in the world. So your mileage might vary there. Dark Creed always messed with your leadership. Their Aura of Terror aura that they have with their obsession is a 6-inch bubble of -1 leadership and -1 combat attrition, which is pretty cool. And doesn't stack though, so you're gonna have to make them take leadership bombs in other ways. But luckily, this book has tons of different ways that you can mess with people's leadership. And if you target a unit that has a lower leadership value than you get +1 to hit, which is cool. And that's only on melee attacks. The Warlord trait is Sphere Incarnate. You pick a unit within 9 inches of your Warlord, roll 3d6. If you roll greater than the unit's leadership characteristic, they can't perform actions and lose OBSEC, which is cool. Spirit Sting is a relic pistol. Don't take that. And then they have their stratagem is a Dark Creed core or character unit basically gets to ignore Lookout Sir. If it's Talos, if it's a unit of Talos, it'll cost 3 command points. But getting like 6, what are they called? 6 Heat Lances into a character from 18 inches is pretty brutal. Like that'll end a lot of characters' day. Because those do d6 + 2 damage now.
Spoilers.
Yeah, thank you. All right, then we've got Coven of 12. They have Butchers of Flesh. They get +1. They get an extra -1 AP. And they can do an action and still shoot. That's weird. And then they have Scarlet Epicurean, -1 damage on your Warlord, which is great. And then they have the Flensing Blade is their relic, which replaces Homunculus tools. It makes you AP -2, Poison 2+, and if you target a character with it, you do flat 3 damage, which is interesting because Homunculuses have like 5 or 6 attacks, so they're pretty beefy. Their stratagem, for 1 command point, you pick an enemy character within engagement range of a Homunculus and roll d6. On a 2 through 5, they take d3 mortal wounds. On a 6, they take d3 plus 3. Note this isn't like once per game. It just is. So that's pretty annoying. And man, do they have... Then you have other covens too. So Artist of Flesh is great. That's -1 damage, but all-consuming. Dark Technomancers I still think is pretty great. That's the... You get to turbocharge your weapons for +1 to hit and... Sorry, +1 to wound and +1 damage. Those are both very good. Other than that, I don't know if these are amazing. Master of Mutagens is interesting, but now it's only melee attacks. It was any kind of poison weapon, so you got to shoot like splinter cans with it. That doesn't work. But Splinter Blade just melee too. All of these are pretty much melee. Enhanced Sensory Organs lets you ignore cover, which is interesting, I guess. Check them out. There's some interesting ones in there for sure. All right, the next section here is an example of how to make a real Space Raiders detachment because the army building for this faction is so complicated that you needed to have a cheat sheet. So it just kind of goes over what you actually should be taking in your army to like make the real Space Raiders work. So this will give you a better idea of what you actually need in your list to play this faction. Stratagems. Man, they have some strats. So you've got Cruel Deception. I thought this one was great. So this one used to let you fall back and still charge or shoot. Now you can pay 1 command point and get one of those benefits, or 2 command points and get both. So it just gives you like a little bit more, like a few more options in order to really kind of cement down what you need to do. Because some units in this army can fall back and still assault, which is great. The Great Enemy is against Slaanesh units. So basically in the fight phase, you get to reroll to hit and reroll to wound against them, which is pretty gross. But yeah, elves hate Slaanesh. It's just a fact. You got Torturous Craft. This is the thing that lets you reroll to wound rolls. If you use it on a character or rack unit only that has 10 or less models, it only costs 1 command point. Otherwise, it costs 2 command points. So on your Talos or your Grotesques. And then you have Lightning Fast Reactions, which went from 2 command points to 1 command point. That's a nice change, especially since it is less useful now with all the minuses from terrain and only stacking to -1 anyway. Hunt from the Shadows gives you an extra pip of cover save when you get shot at, which is pretty nice. So you get +2 to your save from cover. Because you're skulking in the shadows. Alliance of Agony. This one is great still. It lets if you have a Warlord in a real Space Raiders only detachment who's an Archon, you can pick the Archon, the Succubus, and the Homunculus. They all get a Warlord trait for 1 command point. And then you have Tolerated Ambition, which is their give a Warlord trait to another character, which I thought was pretty great. That's a good title for it. And you can use this twice per army list because of if you're playing 2K, or 3 times if you're playing an even bigger game. Prizes from the Dark City is the same, so that's your relic buying one. Webway Portal didn't change. It changed in a weird way. I figured that these would be that they would limit this by the size of the game, but no, they didn't. They kept it exactly the same. So 1 command point for 1 unit to deep strike, or 3 command points for 2 units to deep strike. And you can use it on infantry, bikes, or beast units. The only thing they did change is you can still take Screaming Jets, which is cool. Pain Symphony. Let's see here. So, use a stratagem when a Drukhari unit from your army that's within 6 inches of a Kronos unit destroys an enemy unit with a melee or ranged attack until the end of the battle. That Drukhari army always treats each battle round as if it's a battle round 5 for the purposes of power from pain, which is kind of interesting. That could be kind of cool, actually. It's pretty easy to get as long as you take. It's easy to get as long as you take Kronos, I guess. Eviscerating Flyby. This stratagem is like kind of broken. It's really good. So it's a witch cult unit with fly, so that's Reavers or Hellions. If you move over one model in the unit, you choose every model. Every model in you roll a dice for every model in your unit, and on a 5-up, they take a mortal wound. If they're infantry, you add +1 to the dice roll. So if you have a 20-man Hellion unit and you advance over one dude, you roll 20 dice, and every 4-up is a mortal wound. That could be on a character. That could be on... it doesn't matter. That's insanely powerful, especially with how fast things are. Like, you could advance a unit of Reaver jet bikes, like, 26 inches or something like that, and, like, not necessarily actually fly over them, but kind of, like, hop over them, like, an inch into their base, and then hop back over and, like, retreat. Like, so you could go 13 inches up and 13 inches back, and as long as your base kind of touched one of their bases, like, you'll still get the benefit of that. It's gross. That's an amazing stratagem. Never stationary. After you shoot, you get to move 7 inches. So this is Fire and Fade, but they gave it a different name, which is cool. Then you have Prey on the Weak. So this one you use on a Drukhari core units. If it attacks a unit that's below its starting strength, you get to reroll to hit rolls of 1. If it's below half strength, you get to reroll all to hit rolls. And that's shooting or fighting, which is great. Screaming Jets lets you deep strike a vehicle. They get to just come on, which is great. Deadly Rivals. So this is you target a unit of Reavers and Hellions that are within 12 inches of each other because, they don't like each other. So it pushes them to do things even better. They get +1 to their movement, and they get to reroll to hit rolls with melee weapons for a turn. For 2 command points for both units. I like it. All right. Then you have Swift Outflanking. This lets you take a Drukhari transport that's within 9 inches of the table and put it back into strategic reserve, which is cool. Murderous Descent. So this is when, use this stratagem in the reinforcement step when a transport for an army is set up on the battlefield. Any unit embarked in that transport can immediately get out as long as they stay within 9 inches away. So that's pretty cool, especially combining these two stratagems together is pretty solid. Pray They Don't Take You Alive. You use the stratagem in the fight phase when your Warlord, or when the enemy Warlord is destroyed by an attack made by any Drukhari unit. Until the end of the battle, each time a combat attrition test is taken, subtract 1 from the result. So that's brutal, especially with the Homunculus Coven, to give an extra -1. So if you're below half strength, they're -3 on combat attrition tests. Like, get out of here. You have enhanced Aether Sails, so that's an auto 8-inch advance on a Raider or Ravager unit. Crucible of Malediction is 2 command points. Pick a Homunculus, roll a d6 for each enemy Psyker within 12 inches of that, and for every 4+, that Psyker unit takes d3 mortal wounds. Not bad. Haywire Grenade is the same. Pick a unit with the Haywire Grenade keyword, which is like almost everything. That's like infantry models, so like witches. I think Cabalites have it too. Make it to hit roll. If it hits against a vehicle, they take d3 mortals. Not bad. Hyperstim Backlash. Use this in your command phase. Select a witch cult unit with combat drugs, and you get to double the effect of their combat drug. Pretty cool too. So you can go from like toughness 5 to toughness 6 on like your Hellions or whatever, or you can boost your strength values. That's pretty cool too. Shock Prow is interesting. Use it when a unit with Shock Prow, and you have to buy this upgrade for like Raiders and Ravagers. It doesn't do anything else other than let you use this stratagem. So if you charge a vehicle, roll d6 on a 2+, they take d3 mortal wounds. If you charge an enemy unit that's not a vehicle, roll a d6 for each model and enemy unit that's within engagement range of the Shock Prow unit. For each dice roll that equals or exceeds the toughness characteristic, they take a mortal wound. So if you charge into like 5 Space Marines, you'll probably do 2.5 mortal wounds, something like that as average. So that's not bad. And this one's very interesting. So I initially thought that this was straight broken, and then I did the math on it. So Potent Metallotoxins is a stratagem for 2 command points. You pick a Drukhari unit, and then you get to use their poison ability, which is normally only on non-vehicle units, against vehicles. So, like, you always wound on a 4+ with a bunch of anti-infantry weapons. The problem is that they don't really have great AP on those weapons, so the vehicle is still saving a half to 2/3 of those attacks, even though they're wounding on 4s. The best thing that I could come up with is, like, Poison Tongue, which wounds on a 3+, and they, against a vehicle, and, like, a full 20-man unit of warriors still only does, like, 6 damage to a tank, which is, like, not great.
Not for 2 CP.
Not for 2 command points, and not for only 1 unit. If it was like every unit in your army got to use it, then I think it's decent, right? All right, so these are the Drukhari specific secondaries. I think one of them is good. I think the rest are very situational.
We'll let you guess.
Yeah. Just kidding. It's just Herd the Prey. Take Herd the Prey. Take them alive. When you select this objective, and this is a purge the enemy. When you select this objective, score victory points at the end of the battle for each of the following that apply. Score 3 victory points if any character or monster units were destroyed by melee attacks made by a Drukhari unit from your army during that battle round. So, okay. What I don't understand is the wording on this. Why do they say it's at the end of the battle, but then you score it at the end of the battle, but you score it by battle round? It's like, it's confused on the wording. I don't really understand why. And then you score 1 victory point if any unit, excluding characters, vehicles, or monsters, is destroyed by a melee attack made by a Drukhari unit from your army during that battle round. So basically you get 1 point for killing anything in melee and 3 points for killing a character or monster, but you can only get a max of 4 points per turn. So killing 2 things will max you out on this. It's okay. I think if you take a super combat army, I think it's probably fine. Beasts for the arenas. I thought this one was super weird. Score 3 victory points at the end of the battle for each enemy monster, cavalry, or beast unit that was destroyed by a melee attack made by a witch cult unit from your army. If that unit was Titanic, score 5 victory points instead. Like, it's so situational. Not every
Really specific.
Right, yeah. How many armies have, like, a ton of beasts, cavalry, or monsters? Like, it's going to be super weird. I think it's okay to take against, like, demons.
Knights, maybe? Or is it because it's Titanic?
It's not. No, it's not. It's not vehicles. It's monsters, cavalry, beasts.
Oh, Tyranids.
Yeah, Tyranids probably has some decent stuff in there, too.
So for 2 armies, it's okay.
Yeah. I don't know. That seems not great. But hey, you know, if it might be worth it in some matchups. It's probably really good because it's not limited by turn. So, like, if you kill like 4 monsters in one go, like you charge into a unit, like you're playing against Drukhari, right? And they have a unit of Talos. Killing a unit of Talos in melee with like one of your Witch Cult units will net you 9 command points or 9 victory points. That's pretty good, but it's very specific. Anyway, Fear and Terror is in No Mercy, No Respite. Score 1 victory point at the end of the battle for each model that fled from an enemy unit during that battle round. I think this is interesting, but you have to build your army around getting this secondary.
I was going to say, like, with some of those stratagems where you really mess with stuff, and there's some of the obsessions which mess with stuff, but again, you have to build knowing you're taking that.
Exactly. And then finally, Herd the Prey is reverse engage on all fronts. So it's the same one the Necrons have, basically. So for each table quarter that no enemy units are in, you get 2 victory points. And you don't score it in the first battle round, right? So I think this is great because Dark Eldar can really screen out the table because they have so many units usually that it's going to be super annoying for your opponents to like deep strike into your backfield. I think it's pretty good, but that remains to be seen. I really like that one for Necrons. I take it very often. I take Purge the Vermin, which is the same as Herd the Prey. All right, then we got Warlord traits, baby. So Warlord traits, you've got some for Cabalites, some for Witches, some for Homunculus, and these are generic ones. So these are the ones that are not tied to a particular Cabal, Coven, or Witch Cult. So named characters, Drazar has Eternal Hatred, which is gross. You should definitely pay 1 command point and give Drazar Eternal Hatred every game. Leoth Hellsprax has Blood Dancer, and Urian Rakarth has Diabolical Soothsayer. So those are the specific ones for their cult. Drazar having Hatred Eternal basically gives him to reroll to hit and reroll to wound all the time with all of his attacks. Like, so that for 1 command point is gross. You should definitely take that. Soul Thirst gives you +1 attack for your Warlord, And once per turn, when enemy models within 6 inches, and within 6 inches the Warlord is destroyed, you regain a wound. Nice. Ancient Evil is pick a unit and fight last in combat with you. That's great. That's also a very good Warlord trait. Witch Cult ones, Quicksilver Fighter is great, +2 attacks. So that makes your Succubus 8 attacks base. Gross. Stim Addict, it lets you roll 2 extra dice for combat drugs for your Warlord, which is cool. Precision Blows is nasty. Anytime you roll a 6 to hit with the Warlord, whatever the damage characteristic of your weapon is, it just does that many mortal wounds to your opponent. Oh, amazing. Then Homunculus ones, you've got Master Regenicist. You heal 3 wounds when you use your Fleshcraft ability. That's a new one. We'll get to that later. +1 to wound for your Warlord whenever he makes attacks, which is bad because all the Homunculus attacks pretty much are poison. So that also only worked on unmodified rolls, so that's not great. And then Master Artisan is +1 toughness and wounds to the Warlord, which is pretty good because that makes him like toughness 6 or 7, I think. And 6 wounds, which is nasty. But yeah, those are the Warlord traits. I think there's some really good ones there. Specifically, Eternal Hatred, Ancient Evil, and Precision Blows, I think, are the best ones. And then we have the basic relics. So because there's so many different Cabals, Covens, and Witch Cults that have their own special relics, they only have like 6 actual relics. And I really like this page where they give you like a diagram and show you what the weapon looks like too. I thought that was cool. So Parasite's Kiss is the obligatory relic pistol. It's a poison 2+ pistol with 3 shots, -2 AP, 2 flat damage. Anytime you kill somebody, you get to heal a wound, which is pretty cool. Helm of Spite is the only thing in the book that lets you deny psychic powers, so you may want to take that. If your opponent, so if you deny a power with it, you make them perils, which is cool. The Nightmare Doll gives a Homunculus 4+ Feel No Pain. So that's good. You should take that too. That's a great relic for Homunculus to make sure he can stay alive. If you feel like he's going to be on the front lines, I think that's very solid. Gin Blade is an upgrade for an Archon, so that's upgrades a Husk Blade. It gives +1 strength, an extra -1 AP, and an extra damage on that, so it's like all around just a great upgrade. And you get to make 2 extra attacks with it, so that takes the Archon to 7 attacks. The only downside is, at the end of the fight phase, if you made any attacks with it, roll a d6. On a 1, you take a mortal wound. Yeah, whatever. Animus Vitae is a special grenade. It's once per battle. If you hit, the unit takes d3 mortal wounds. If it has 11 or more models, they take d3 +3 mortal wounds. And then, until the end of the turn, friendly units with the Power from Pain ability treat the current battle round as being 1 higher. So that's great if you need it to like buff your attacks or something like that. Now, the Triptych Whip, I think, is the best of all the generic relics. This is for a Succubus with an Agonizer. It's Strength user, -3 AP, 2 flat damage, but it is poison 2+, so your girl is wounded on a 2. And you get +3 attacks when you use it. So that brings her to 9 attacks. So combine this with the Warlord trait, 9 attacks, any 6s you roll to hit are also 2 mortal wounds instead of having to go through the other stuff. And then also wounding on 2s turns her into an absolute blender. So yeah, good relics, solid relics. And then we get on to the Crusade rules. All right, so you've got your agendas like you do with any kind of Crusade army. You've got Gruesome Bounty, your Demonstrate Superiority, which is pretty cool. Basically, that's like a contest between the different like Cabals, Witch Cults, and Covens. You can do stuff like take credit for doing things. These guys are great. Or sending a message. Keep a terror tally for each Drukhari unit in your army. Drukhari infantry and biker units from your army can attempt the following action. Redecorate. At the end of your movement...
Redecorate?
Is that right? Yeah. That's what that says.
Okay.
At the end of your movement phase, 1 unit from your army that's within 3 inches of an objective marker can start to perform this action. The action is complete at the end of your turn. If completed, add 1 to that unit's terror total. That objective is now "quote unquote" terrifying and has the following ability: Terrifying Aura. While a unit, excluding Drukhari units within 6 inches of an objective, subtract 1 from your the leadership characteristics. Well, an enemy unit is within 6 inches of a terrifying objective. Each time that unit fails a morale check, add 1 to the terror tally for each Drukhari unit from your army that is within 6 inches of the same objective. Yeah, so they like when they say redecorate, I think they're putting like heads, flayed bodies, that kind of stuff on there.
That's rug really ties the objective.
It really ties the objective together. You got all kinds of cool requisitions that you can do. I liked Soul Trap. They previewed that. You've got clandestine dealings. Purchase this requisition when you have an Ascendant Lord Archon. That'll be coming up in your order of battle. After gaining raid spoils points for the battle, gain a number of raid spoils equal to the number of requisition points that were spent on this. So you can like really boost you can really reinvest your raid spoils back into your warband. So, because they have like territorial dominance, so like you roll and see what territories they generate, which like in Commorragh, which is super interesting.
The Murder Cove.
Hey, who wouldn't want to have control of the Murder Cove, dude? Or let's see, the Shadow Loom, or
the Parchway.
You know what though?
That sounds nice. That sounds like you're in holiday there.
Vex Heel. That's got to be a bar. For sure.
Or like a bondage club.
No, dude, that's the choke. Oh. Sufferer's Row is another great one there I like too. Oh, the Parchway. Dude, that's got to be a bar too.
All of these are just clubs.
And so these will have like, depending on what kind of area of Commorragh it is, they'll give you different benefits, which is cool. And then you have Spoils of Battle, which lets you spend stuff to like either take different territories or get perfect specimens, or there's the Deadliest Catch is one of them. That lets you like add like a Drukhari Beast unit to your army, which is pretty cool. And then you have like weapon enhancement, battle scars, special Crusade relics. You gotta love the special like legendary ones, the like the Mask of the First Age. I assume that's back before the fall.
Yeah.
Some dude has some fancy hat from then. Gives them +1 movement, attack, wounds, and leadership.
These Crusade rules are just making them sound like Victorian gentlemen.
They are good, sir. Yeah, so awesome. All right, and so that moves on to data sheets. All right, so you've got Power from Pain. And these are the detachment abilities. Sorry, we'll go into the data sheet. So this is kind of the summation of the things that various different units in the book have. So the Power from Pain table has changed, but they preview that, so I'm not going to go over the Power from Pain table. I think everybody can see that for what it is. And also poisoned weapons. It's only on unmodified rules, just like you would expect it, and it excludes vehicle or Titanic units. Blade Artists is a new ability, and we talked about that. Anytime you roll an unmodified twin roll of 6, improve the AP by 1, which is on everything in this book pretty much, which is so good. It even makes the vehicles like decent because they're already AP -1 in combat. The vehicles are, and they have decent weapon skills. They're like weapon skill 4. So then you have Insensible to Pain. This is for the Coven models usually. They basically get a 5-up ignore wounds. So Death Guard, you know where it went? It went straight to the Homunculus Covens.
Good redistributed. Socialist rules.
And then combat drugs. So combat drugs have changed a little bit. Like the Adrenalite, which is the +1 attack one, only happens if you've charged or performed a heroic intervention. And then Splinter Mine gives you a bonus ballistic skill and leadership. So you can make yourself ballistic skill 2+ on witch units, which is interesting, maybe for Reaver jet bikes, because they have blasters and things like that on them. So giving them a 2+ ballistic skill seems pretty neat. The cool thing about this is every unit can pick the same combat drug. So if you guys are really heavy into like Serpentin or Painbringer, your whole army can have that. Like they can all be addicts at that particular combat drug. Instead of doing that, if you want to, you can say, I'm going to randomly roll for my combat drugs, and then you get to roll twice. And I think you re-roll duplicate results. Yep, you re-roll duplicate results. So that's pretty cool. And it even gives you a little thing of what to write on your list. You should write random on your list.
Yeah.
Which is cool.
You got their combat drugs from a Commorragh bathroom.
Yeah. Yeah, we know all about that, don't we, John? Data sheets. Archon, man, has he gotten a lot nastier. He's got 5 attacks, still got 5 wounds. He's got a 4-up armor save now, which is nice. He only had a 5-up armor save before. He's got Blade Arts. He's got Power from Pain. The Overlord ability that he has affects core units and also Incubi, which is cool because they're his bodyguards, so it should affect them too, which I like a lot. Yeah. They changed the Husk Blade to be flat 2 damage instead of D3 like it was before. And then we've got the Succubus. You can see her stats have changed. Like she went from 4 attacks to 6 attacks. I think she was 4 attacks before. That sounds right. Still has lightning dodge for the 4-up invulnerable save, but all the time, not just from close combat. Her Queen of Death, or sorry, it's the Brides of Death. Sorry. That's interestingly now a reroll 1s to wound roll for Witch Cult units, for Witch Cult core units instead of reroll 1s to hit. So that makes the reroll, or the Real Space Raiders, where the Archon can give reroll 1s to hit for anything with Real Space Raiders, pretty powerful. And then No Escape has changed significantly in that you roll a dice with your opponent and you have to beat them in order for them to not be able to fall back. So really, you have like a 33% chance of not having your opponent fall back, unless you have a shard net, and then it's -1 to your opponent's dice roll. So, yeah. The Homunculus is 4 attack space. I think he was 5 before, so I think he went down. He is toughness 4, and he doesn't give himself +1 toughness, so he is stuck at toughness 4, but he is 6 wounds. He gained the Fleshcraft rule, which means that you can heal monsters or grotesques by D3 wounds at the end of the movement phase, which is nice. And then he still gives the +1 toughness to Homunculus Coven core units, which is everything that Homunculus Coven has. That's not a vehicle, which is great. Pretty good otherwise. He's got some interesting attacks. His scissor hands do give him an extra 2 attacks, so he does have 6 attacks technically. Just not all of them are quite as good as other weapons. Lilith Hellsprax. She's pretty interesting. They took away her combat drugs again, so she's off. So she's back. She's clean again.
Rehab.
Yep, she's out of rehab. She's ready to fight. She still has no escape. She's still got Deadly Dance, so she basically gets the master succubus rules already baked into her data sheet. So does Urin Rakarth as well. He is the monster. He basically gets to get back up from death, which is pretty interesting. Let's see. So she gets to reroll to hit and to wound rolls against characters. She's got 7 attacks. Any 6s she rolls to hit score an extra hit. So she gets potentially, if she has her Warlord trait, every 6 to hit that she makes, she gets 3 extra hits on top of that.
Gross.
So I mean, she can throw out a ton of attacks. And then her she's got Quicksilver Dodge, which gives her a 4 invul all the time. And then if you target her in melee, she's -1 to hit. And then she has the Natural Perfection ability. So in your command phase, you can pick one of these things. She can charge in a turn in which she fell back or advanced, or Gory Spectacle in the fight phase. If this model destroys enemy units at the end of the fight phase, it gets to fight again. So that's pretty cool. Drazar. Let's talk about Drazar. Drazar is gross. Drazar should be... Well, he's so good. I love him. He's exactly as good as you would expect him to be, which is so great. I'm very happy about him. So he's still got Blade Artist. He's got Power from Pain. His melee weapons went up 1 damage on all their profiles, I think. So he's if he swings heavy, he's got 5 strength 6 -3 3 damage attacks, or he gets to make 7 strength 5 -3 2 damage attacks, which is cool. He has the Incubi keyword, so if he's close to an Archon, he rerolls 1s to hit. Or if he has his Warlord trait, he rerolls to hit and to wound, right? He gets to fight twice every turn. It's pretty good. He's Ancient Warrior, so he's -1 damage, and he's Eternal Warrior, so he gets 4+ invul. So he's a 2+ armor, 4+ invul, -1 damage. Toughness 4 for an elf is also pretty good. Man, I cannot wait for the Phoenix Lords to be as good as him. That's so cool. And then friendly Incubi units within 6 inches of him get +1 to wound. And note that doesn't say like core or other incubi units. It just says friendly. So he gives himself Master of Blades. So he is also +1 to wound all the time. Yeah, and then he's finally got Tormentors, which is a new ability that the incubi have. Thank God. I'm glad that they got rules for Tormentors that weren't just garbage, because they were so bad before. They were so situational, never came up hardly. So at the start of the fight phase, select one enemy unit with an engagement range of this model and roll 2d6. If the result is greater than that unit's leadership characteristic until the end of your turn, that unit is not eligible to fight until all other eligible units from your army have done so. So basically, he gives a fight last in melee if you can roll higher than their leadership. So if you can reduce their leadership, that's just another benefit that you can get by nuking somebody's leadership in this army, which is cool. Urin Rackhearth is really good. He's still 4+ invul. He's still half damage. He has 5 up feel no pain. He's got he gets to get back up once per game on a 2+ with D3 wounds left. He's going to be a pain in the dick to kill. Like, he's got 6 wounds. If you give him his Warlord trait, he can go up to 7 wounds at toughness 6. Yeah, he's awesome. And I also like the Casket of Flensing now doesn't have to roll to hit, which is great because it used to, and that was bad. What else? He still gives a +1 bonus to strength and leadership to coven units within 6 inches of him. So that's Talos, Grotesques, whatever else. That's pretty nice. Oh yeah, and then at the start of the fight phase, roll a d6 for each enemy unit that's engagement range. On a 6, they take 1 mortal wound. Those are from the worms that come out of his butt. Yeah, he's great. You should, if you're going to take Prophets of Flesh, he's definitely worthwhile. Next, we have Kabalite Warriors. We'll start on the troop choices here. Kabalite Warriors have changed a bit. They're a +1 attack and a 4+ save instead of a 5+. They still have the same weapon options. Most all the weapons are the same. Notably, ones that are different, you have the Phantasm Grenade Launcher that you can give to the Sarabite. And that is an assault D3 weapon, so it's not a grenade, so it doesn't preclude him from firing his like Splinter Rifle if he has one of those. And it's D3 shots with blast. Each time a unit is hit by this weapon, roll 2d6. If it's higher than the leadership characteristic, they take 1 mortal wound. So again, you see like this leadership bomb kind of like built, like that's really important to this army. So I think it's worthwhile to kind of build a little bit for that. Still has basically the same options, and you can take that Phantasm Grenade Launcher on like every single core unit in this army pretty much, except for the racks. So like Witches can take it, Kabalites can take it, Raiders can take it, Ravagers can take it. So those, you can like stack this up quite a bit, especially if you are going pretty vehicle heavy. The Dark Lance did go up to D3 +3 damage instead of D6, which is pretty nice. Witches. The witch weapons have changed a bit. I think that's probably the biggest change to this unit. Otherwise, they're pretty much still the same. Still a 6-up invul, which they'll get from Power from Pain, and a 4+ invul in close combat, which is the same. They just, they don't get a 6-up Feel No Pain anymore. Where to start with them? Okay, so you've got your... the Hakardi Blades, they also got an extra attack, which is nice. Pretty much everything in this book got an extra attack. So Witches have 4 attacks each, all the time. Not on the charge. There's nothing that predicates that. And they're -1 AP on their Hakardi Blades, which is nice. Let's see. Razor Flails are -1 AP, and you get to make 2 attacks per attack. So the model with Razor Flails gets to make 6 attacks with its weapon, which is cool. Shardnet Impaler is great. Its strength user gets to make an extra attack. It's -2 and it's 2 flat damage, and it screws with your opponent's dice roll. So if you stack up 2 Shardnet and Impalers on a unit of Witches, it gives a -2 to your opponent's dice roll to try and flee. But you have to have 20 Witches in your squad to have 2 Shardnet and Impalers. You can only take 1 per 10 models, and that's 1 of each Witch weapon. The Hydra Gauntlets give a +2 strength, -2 AP, and you get an extra attack. So the Hydra Gauntlets are probably the worst option out of all of them, I think. The other ones are, to me, a lot better. So then you have Racks. Racks have changed a lot. So they don't have an invulnerable save except from Power from Pain anymore. But they are toughness 4 base, and if they're close to a homunculus, that means they're toughness 5. So of all the units Dark Eldar have, Racks are really great at sitting on objectives. They're really tough. They're hard to remove. They have a 5-up Feel No Pain. They have a 6-up invul, or except on turn 3, then they have a 5-up invulnerable save. So they're pretty, and for their price point now, which is 8 points, I think they're very good. They can still take a sniper rifle on the sergeant. They have a couple of other shooting options, which are mostly the same, I think. To be honest, I haven't played a ton with Racks before. I think that they're interesting. I just don't think that they're like before. They were interesting, but not. They were fine. They were okay. They were a good objective holder that sat on the back. Now I think with Prophets of Flesh to make them transhuman against like the smaller attacks, and they're still toughness 5 against bolter fire. Like they're going to be super resilient and very annoying to get rid of. So yeah, I love Racks for sitting on your objectives while the rest of your army goes and does other stuff. Especially if you have a homunculus kind of babysitting them and bringing back D3 a turn with his Warlord trait. They'll last forever. And the Hemocysts, the special unit, like the Trueborn for these guys, they get +1 to invul save, so they do get a 4+ invulnerable save on turn 3 and a 5+ otherwise. So those guys are especially good at that. Okay, Court of the Archon. What a totally different unit. I love this unit now, and I would take it a lot, I think. It's in my list that I've been writing. So one thing that's super weird about this unit is every single model has 3 wounds, which is like bizarre. And two of the models, the Urgals and the Sliths, have 5-up Feel No Pain too, which is super weird. It just does a lot of different things. I think I would probably just take like maybe 4 Urgals in my unit because they're cheap. They're only 16 points a model for 3 wounds, and they have 6 attacks each on the charge at -1 AP. Now, they don't have Blade Artists except for the Lamian, which is fine, but they do have Power from Pain, which means that they do hit on like 2s after a certain time, and they get to advance and charge, and they move like 8 inches? Yeah, they move like 8 inches. So I think they're good. Like, and they're Cabal, so they get all the Cabal traits too. So yeah, I think they're dope. What a great less 70-point unit or something like that. Let's see, 64-point unit for three of them that has 12 wounds and has a 5-up Feel No Pain. I think that's awesome. Man, Incubi are so much better. They did preview a little bit, like their weapon profiles and things like that. But the thing that they didn't preview was 2 things. They didn't preview Tormentors, which we already went over. And then they have Lethal Precision. While this unit contains a Clavex, every melee attack made by a model in this unit on an unmodified wound roll of 6 adds 1 to the damage. So that means they go up to damage 3 on 6s to wound, and that also gives them an extra -1 AP from Blade Artists, so they go to -4. They're already hitting on 2s. They can get +1 to wound from Drazar. These guys are gross. Like, they hit exactly like you would expect them to, and will dice through a unit of Marines no problem. I love these guys. I'm so happy that these guys are finally good again, because the models are super cool, and they hit. Their weapon skill 2-ups, so they hit just as hard as you would expect. On turn 2, they can advance and charge, so they can like get out of a transport for 3 inches, move 7 plus D6 inches, and then still assault, and hit like a freight train. And they might make you fight last randomly too, because that's a thing that they can do. So yeah, Incubi are dope. You should definitely take some Incubi. Mandrakes, I think Mandrakes are also great. They're 15 points a model, so they're a little bit more expensive than some of the other choices. But they get to advance deploy, which is rad. Just like a unit of infiltrators or Nurglings or something like that. They're -1 to hit all the time. They have a 5+ invulnerable save all the time, and once per game they can take themselves off the table and go back into strategic reserves and deep strike back on the table. So, like, for scramblers, this unit just does it itself. Like, first turn, it scrambles in the mid zone, and then pulls itself off on turn 2. On turn 2, turn 3, it comes back on your enemy's deployment zone and finishes it, assuming that there's space. So yeah, they're great. And they attack decently too. Like, they have the Bale Blast does mortal wounds on 6s to wound, in addition to normal damage, and they still have 3 attacks each at strength 4 -1 AP. So yeah, I think they're great. Grotesques. I'm not super sold on these guys as being amazing. I think that they're probably a fine price point for what they are. They're still 4 wounds. They're still toughness 5, which goes to toughness 6 around a homunculus. They're monstrous cleaver. You still get to make an extra attack. So they do go up to 5 attacks a model and then 1 attack, or they can just attack with flesh gauntlets and potentially try and to wound, like just spam 6s to wound to do mortals. It does do that in addition to normal damage, so that's kind of cool. And you can take every model with a liquefier, which is kind of interesting, but probably not worth it. I think they're fine. They're fine. I just don't think they're anything to like super write home about anymore, especially since they lost a 4+ invulnerable save, which is a pretty big hit for them. Okay, Beastmasters are weird. Like, let's just get that out like out there. And the beasts are all weird. Like, this is a super weird combination. Plus, they like mixed up the way they're displaying this, so it's like elites and then fast attack, all on one page. I don't know. Does it turn into fast attack after that? Oh, it does. Okay, so never mind. It makes sense. I'm just dumb. So. The Beastmaster's a mini hero for 40 points. He's real fast. He's got an Agonizer already, which is nice. So he's got a little bit of hitting power. He lets you have to take a Beastmaster for beast units to be in your army at all. I think the beasts are pretty legit. Some of them are cool. I really like Clawed Fiends. But he lets you reroll 1s for beasts within 6 inches of him, and they lets him use his leadership as well. And he can pick 1 unit of beasts within 6 at the start of the command phase, and they get to advance and charge, because the beasts don't have power from pain. So they don't get to advance and charge unless he tells them to. So Clawed Fiends are great. They're strength 5, 4 wounds, 5 attacks. If any of them are wounded, every model in the unit gets +1 attack. They have -2 AP, strength 5, 2 flat damage. So the way I look at these guys is they're like Spawn. They're 25 points a model. They're just a lot faster than Spawn are at 10-inch move. And they can advance and charge with the Beastmaster. So like 5 of these guys, because you can take 6. So 5 Clawed Fiends costs you 125 points. It gives you 20 wounds worth of toughness 5 that you really don't care that much about. They can reroll 1s to hit from the Beastmaster. I think they're pretty decent. They hit decently hard, and they're not super expensive. Razorwing Flocks are a great little objective getter. They're very fast. They're 12-inch move. They fly. They do Razorwing things. They're fine too. And you can take 2. You have to take a min 3 Razorwing Flocks. That's fine. Commorragh are pretty bad. They're cheap. They're like 10 points a model. But they don't hit super hard. They're like a bunch of strength 5 attacks at -1 AP. For 1 damage, they get 3 attacks apiece, and they have a 5-up invul save, but only 1 wound I think is rough. Like, even Bolter Fire is just going to really decimate them, so I don't rate them super high. But the other beasts I think are fine for doing stupid stuff. Like the Razorwing Flocks are great for just like jumping on an objective, because it's still 12 wounds of models or whatever for 3 of them for pretty cheap. Reavers and Hellions, probably some of the better units in the whole book. Reavers are one of the fastest units in the entire game, if not the fastest unit in the entire game. So their movement 18 base, and they can auto advance 8, which means they can go 26 inches. If they're Red Grief, they can go 28 inches. If it's turn 2 or more, they can still charge. So talk about a great unit for just like locking stuff up in combat. You can give them combat drugs to make them toughness 5. And they have 2 wounds apiece still, just like you would expect from a biker. And they have a 4-up save now, which is great. I think they were a 5-up before. I still don't rate the cluster caltrops or the grav talons. I don't think those are awesome. I think the shooting weapons they have are fine to upgrade if you want to do that. If you need like an extra heat lance or an extra blaster, I think that's fine. Just keep in mind, heat lances went to heavy 1 instead of assault 1, so you can advance and shoot them. I think all that stuff in here, like a lot of the assault weapons have turned to heavy weapons. I think that's probably a balanced thing, just because everything in this army can advance and charge. So why wouldn't you just be advancing every turn with everything? So this kind of makes you make some choices. But yeah, they're great for their points. 20 points a model. Although okay, to be fair, in the book it does say they're 10, but we all know that that's a misprint. I feel like if it does mean 10, like I'll eat my words, but I do feel like they're supposed to be 20 points still. Hellions are so much better. Jesus Christ, this unit just they really stacked on the buffs to make these guys good, which I'm glad because the models are really cool, and I'm really glad that we're going to see them on the table some more. So there are 3 attack. Oh, one more thing about Reavers that I didn't say. Reavers did go up to 3 base attacks, and so just to match their Hellion brothers, and the blade veins that they have, which is the same weapon the vehicles have, are now strength +1 instead of a flat strength 4. So any strength buffs that you can give to Reavers will also buff their actual melee weapons too. So they got much better in melee. Hellions, of course, did as well. The Hellglaive got a -1 on its AP value, and they got Blade Artist, so they're an extra -1 if they roll a 6 to wound, which is awesome. Man, they have so many attacks at damage 2. Like, they just will wreck stuff. Like, a unit of 20 throws out 60 attacks. If they have the combat drug for +1 attack, then you're looking at 80 attacks. Like, they can really stack that stuff on there. Their movement 14 on turn 2 again, they can advance and charge. Like, that is a huge ability. They are so quick. They went up to 2 wounds each instead of 1 wound, and they are toughness 4. They can also fall back and still charge. They have splinter pods, so they shoot 2 shots apiece with splinter weapons, and their assault, so you can advance and do it. At 17 points a model, they are steel. I would really always consider taking Hellions in your army. I think they're probably the most improved unit in the entire book. Yeah, they're like my A1. This is the unit that you should be looking at, and you'll probably see a lot on the table. So make sure you understand the interactions for Hellions if you want to really understand.
Make sure you order them before they're sold out.
Yeah, they're totally going to. I'm glad I already have like 30 of them, so that's fine for me. But for other people, yeah, totally. I get that. I feel you. Oh, and keep in mind, as we talked about earlier, core, so they get all the buffs. Scourges, also core. So the cool thing about Scourges is that if you take like a Real Space Raiders detachment or Cabal the Blackheart, you can give them rerolls from your... I think, actually, no, it's just Real Space Raiders. You can give them reroll 1s to hit, which is really cool. Because they never had the ability to get any kind of enhancement to hit. This is the first place that we're seeing this as well. The updated Drukhari Haywire launcher, which has changed significantly. So it went from an assault weapon to a heavy weapon. It's still D3 shots with blast. It's strength 3 minus 3 AP D3 damage, whereas before it was strength 4 minus 1 damage. And it always wounds vehicles on a 4. If you roll an unmodified 6 to wound, it does D3 mortal wounds in addition to normal damage. These things kick the shit out of the old Haywire launchers. If Harlequins get these on their bikes, those bikes are going to be the terror of any tank on the table. They will murder tanks. Before it was like pretty consistent mortal wounds. Now you're just making them take saves at -3. So if they have an invul save, they're probably going to do okay. But if they don't have an invul save, they're going to be effed. Like, D3 damage every single time you're hitting them is really painful. So unless it's like a Plague Burst Crawler or something like that, which just doesn't give a shit, I think these are amazing. And like, I don't know that I'm going to take a unit of Scourges every single game, just due to slots and points and stuff like that. Plus, I really like Scourges. But I think that they're very, very good. They also get to Deep Strike for free, and they have a 5-up invul all the time. They also got the same +1 attack. They got Blade Artists. They're pretty good. Talos. Talos went to 110 points, and they have to pay some points for some of the upgrades, like Heat Lances and stuff like that. They still explode for a little bit of mortal wounds. Things that have changed. Macro Scalpel, much better. The chain flails are way worse. So I think you want to go, instead of, it used to be like the best setup for them was 1 macro scalpel, 1 chain flail, because you can kind of like pick if you wanted to make 10 attacks each, or if you just wanted to make like 4 attacks with, or 8 attacks each. I forget which one it is. They have 5 attack space now. Now I would just take 2 macro scalpels, so you're rolling 6 attacks at strength 7, minus 2 AP, 2 flat damage. The Talos Gauntlet might not be the most terrible choice now. It does make you strength 8, but it is minus 1 to hit. That kind of counteracted by plus 1 to hit from Power from Pain, which is interesting. Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. There's definitely some cool like weapons that they can take. Let's see. So the Ichor Injector is still bad. Don't take the Ichor Injector, guys. The Drukhari Haywire Launcher, they can do double those, which is dope. Like, that's a lot of shots from that unit of Talos that can mess up a vehicle pretty hard. The Stinger Pod is pretty bad, but they can still take Splinter Cannons, which are good, and Heat Lances. All right. Then we got Chronos. Chronos are interesting. I don't know how good they are. They're pretty cheap. Like, if you give them all the upgrades they can take, so that's the Spirit Siphon, the Spirit Vortex, they already get the little the mouth injector thing. Oh, sorry, no, that's the Vortex. Anyway, or the Spirit Probe. You get to reroll 1s to wound for core or character units within 6, which is not terrible. And it's only on melee attacks, so it's not great. They're kind of tough for their points, I guess. They don't hit super hard. Their ability, they can heal units or bring units back from the dead, but it's only once per unit within 6, and that's only if they kill stuff in melee with their little whippy talons. So I think they're okay. They're okay.
It's real specific.
It's super specific. Like, and they can do stuff like make 1 unit count as turn 5 for Power from Pain, which is kind of cool, I guess.
There seems to be a ton of other ways to make that happen too.
Well, I think that's the only way to manipulate Power from Pain, unless you're Blackheart, because they count it as being 1 higher than it normally is. Other than that, I don't know that there's a ton of ways. Oh, there's the Relic too.
On Relic?
There's the one Relic that you can throw the grenade. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, they're okay. I wouldn't say they're like on the top of the. They're not like cutting edge like meta choices, but I think that they're fine to play with. Ravagers took a decent hit with losing core comparatively, so they're not getting the rerolls from Archons and stuff like that, which is rough. But it does get Blade Artists.
Of course.
And this kind of takes us to some of the vehicle war gear that you can take now. So first you can take Chain Snares, which add +3 to their attacks characteristic, which takes them to 6 attacks on their vehicles. So 6 attacks at top profile, 6 attacks hitting on 4s, strength 7, minus 1 AP, 1 damage. It's like not terrible for a couple of extra wounds on something. And they're only 5 points. The important one I feel like is Grizzly Trophies, which gives a 3-inch aura of -2 leadership. So just to make sure that people are failing for those combat attrition tests, or agonizers, or the tormentors from Incubi to make people fight last, that kind of stuff. Or so there's all different kinds of applications for that, and that can go on Venoms. I think that's a pretty good upgrade. Dark Lances went up, got a lot better. Disintegrators stayed the same. Disintegrators cost more points. So, and they can take a Phantasm Grenade Launcher, which you totally should, because it's just like free mortal wounds potentially. Raiders stayed mostly the same. They get the same vehicle upgrades, except they also have Splinter Racks, which makes it so that you always count as being in half range with rapid fire weapons. So if you take 10 Cabalites and throw them in there, they get to just throw out 20 Splinter Rifle shots all the time, which is cool. Also, the Raider got +1 carrying capacity, so it's 11 guys now instead of 10. So you can take 10 guys plus your combat character and stick them in there, which is cool. Venoms also went up to 6. Venoms also got hovering, which they didn't have before, which I think is great. You always measure to the hull for everything for it, which I really am glad for, because they were super annoying where like the guys would shoot out the top but measure from the hull of the thing, but you measured back to the base, so there was some times where like you couldn't touch the guys inside. Anyway, annoying, but definitely I think Grizzly Trophies is a totally good choice on them. And I also think it's worth it to take 2 Splinter Cannons. 16 inches of movement, super fast. Raiders are 14. God, this army is so fast. Super good. Oh man, the planes. I'm really disappointed by the planes, actually.
I was going to say, this is where I play the satellite wah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm glad I don't have to play against a bunch of planes because they're really good. But planes that have a 4+ save and a 5+ invul, like, are not going to live a lot. Oh, this unit also does not have blade artists. The Razor Wing is kind of expensive at like 160 to 180, depending on what choices you take on it. I think you take the Dark Lances now instead of the Disintegrators again, which is fine. The Void Raven Bomber is about 210 points with all its upgrades, which is a lot of points for a 12 wound toughness 6 model. But its Void Mine wrecks people potentially. So the Void Mine, if you drop it on somebody, it's one of those ones where it's a point, and then you roll a d6 for each enemy unit within 6. -1 if they're a character. On a 4+, they take d6 mortals. So like if your opponent has a bunch of characters bunched up in like a blob, like hiding, and you fly this guy over them on first turn, drop that Void Mine, and keep in mind, this can be. You can leave the battlefield. So you can fly over them and drop the bomb and like just come back on later. But, oh man, like you can potentially really cripple somebody's army with d6 mortal wounds on a 4. Or you could roll all 1s and 2s, 1, 2s and 3s and not do anything. So, gotta risk it for the biscuit if you want those, want those good things. Their guns are still really good. A strength 8 disintegrator effectively with -4 AP is really solid. Points values. So points on this is exactly the same as it was on the Munitorium Field Manual. Nothing changed. So, yeah, you should check that book out if you don't already have it. Or if you don't have it, check out the FAQ on Games Workshop website where they'll give you updated points for all those units.
Or buy a White Dwarf.
Yeah, or buy a White Dwarf. Which you should anyway. White Dwarf is cool. I've been reading a lot of the articles. They've been fun lately. The only thing that's wrong on here, of course, is the Reavers are 10 points model. I think.
Or is it right?
Yeah, who knows?
God, I hope it's wrong.
Then this is something different they did. They put the weapon profiles in the back, which I like because that leans it more towards reference. And then finally, you get a glossary with the additional references of things like, hey, what's power from pain? Oh yeah, here it is. Or what are my combat drugs? Okay, cool. I can look it up right here. So that's pretty nice. But overall, that kind of goes over the Drukhari book. What a great book, man. It's so fast. It's so hard. I'm very excited to either see this on the table, like against me, or play it myself. I have a very large Drukhari army, so I'm pretty happy to see this. I'm super stoked. I can't wait to see what people come up with for armies. My armies have been super scatterbrained. I initially thought Aura stacked, and so I was looking at Dark Mirth, and I was like, this is totally busted. I need to play like 13 Venoms with this. But it's not, and Games Workshop is smart, and I'm just dumb, so it worked out pretty well. I think what an awesome book.
Seems to be everything is super low toughness wise.
Oh yeah,
and paper thin, but
man,
as they get to your lines, you're done.
Like, and the melee is increased a ton, which is great because that's what this army really should be about. Because traditionally, I would say in the fluff, like Drukhari. Well, except for, I guess, Harlequins. I would say they're the combat elves. But, like, comparatively to Craft Worlds, like, Drukhari are not a shooting army. They've always been very much like a punch you in the face. Cool. Take your lunch money.
What a great book to make you reevaluate your army to see what screens you have.
Yeah, because you're going to need them. If not the first turn, definitely the second.
Yep.
So, yeah, if you enjoy this video, we do this every time we get a new book comes out. As long as GW deigns to send us one, which is awesome. We always really appreciate getting that from GW. If you like this content but want to listen to other content that's not a review, you can check out our podcast, which goes up every other week, wherever mediocre podcasts are found. That's my tagline. Also, if you want to stay tuned to other things we have, we put up all our podcasts on YouTube. Go ahead and hit that like and subscribe to our channel.
Smash that bell.
Smash the bell, baby. So this has been Danny and John. Have a good night.